breaking today, loose women in turmoil, as the ITV daytime show is now headed to the axe for good in just 12 months, as bosses at the embattled channel ban all guests from appearing on the show whatsoever in the latest desperate bid to save money. Now, of course, this is the ultimate example of go woke, go broke. Loose Women used to be an absolutely brilliant, lovable show in the days of Carol McGiffin and Sherry Hewson and Linda Bellingham and Jane McDonald. I mean, I could go on, right? It was a show for the working classes. And what we have seen in recent years is Loose Women has decided to look down on its audience and try and treat its audience as a group of people who need to be educated. And indeed, I thought we saw a brilliant example of that just this week when Charlene White totally misread the room. Because when we were all thinking about those people who were blown up by Islamist extremists on 7/7 and what that meant for the capital city, Charlene White decided to lecture us about the fact that actually we should be much, much more concerned about Muslim folk who may have been impacted as a result of some very understandable natural social anxiety. Watch. Can you believe that more than half of you are watching this video but not subscribed? So please do me a huge favor. Click the subscribe button now. Turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to all of our brand new Outspoken videos.
I just wanted to say one thing that sometimes is forgotten in the story is what it was like in the years, months, years, weeks following that attack, just how difficult it was for anybody Muslim living in this country. And I had friends that would sit on trains and people would physically move away from them on trains. And it was a really hard period for them. And so, yes, we did have solidarity. We can't forget those for whom they were not afforded that solidarity.
Just says it all, doesn't it? Just absolutely says it all. And I believe it is a type of woke indoctrination which Loose Women has been attempting to conduct on its viewers. And so one of its viewers said, hell no, we're off. And that's why their ratings are down 50%. And that's why they've now been effectively axed for half of the year. And that's why they're no longer going to be able to attract any big name guests. Carol McGiffin, who made her debut here on Outspoken, I'm very excited to say she'll be coming back regularly later in the year, recently told me exactly how it happened and why she is so disappointed.
And you don't want to put the telly on and have a load of 4 women talking about everybody's having a bad menopause. Not everyone has a bad menopause. And if you're having a bad menopause, well, you know, you want to be cheered up. You want to forget about it. So let's put daytime TV on and all you've got is these, you know, grizzling, sniveling people. Everyone's crying. Everyone's upset. It's like it's celebrating victims. That's what it's doing. Loose Women never used to do that. It used to celebrate strong women, and they were all strong women. Now it's like, you know, let's get a victim on. Let's get someone who's something terrible has happened to them, and it's almost every single day. It's like, you know, it's just taken all the fun out of it, and it's no wonder people are switching off, and so they've got to go back on to 30 weeks a year. I'm surprised it lasted as long as it did in that format, because most of the time I find it pretty unwatchable.
To our superstar panel, Lee Harris, Bernie Spofforth. Look, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because unfortunately, TV is no longer, well, actually, I would say fortunately, unfortunately for them, fortunately for us, TV is no longer able to have this monopoly position where people are forced into watching content that simply doesn't align with their values. Do you agree, Bernie?
Oh, yeah, I completely agree.
Our very own Loose Women.
Actually, I do have to say that I have an office at home, and often I'm in the kitchen at lunchtime and I'll put Loose Women on, right? And I am always forever shocked at how appalling it is. And I actually watch it as a bit of a guilty pleasure because it's terrible. And the worst episode I saw when I thought, no, it's over now for this show, they really should can it, was during COVID. Well, it was when they were all sat really far apart. So we were half in of lockdown, half out. And they actually modeled dresses with built-in COVID masks. I was like, it's so over. It's so over for this show. And I know, look, it's very sad when people lose jobs and they lose incomes. And particularly for those women, it is very difficult. What show do they go on? That's the only one of its type. And of course, I feel sorry for people losing income, but then I have to bat it back to them and say, it is commercially unviable. You have lost your audience, and that is on you presenters. Yeah, I know they have a load more rules that they have to behave themselves with now, but it's down to them. And if there are no viewers, that's on their shoulders.
Indeed. I mean, during COVID, that's when Carol McGiffin had enough, because they were conducting segments like this. Watch it. Stacey Solomon. Our tips for showing emotion behind a face mask. Whereas actually, of course, what Loose Women should have been discussing is we don't need to be in these face masks at all. And that's the problem. It over that period proved that it was just an extension. ITV Daytime was just an extension of the deep state. And as a result, people had turned off because they realized this actually isn't entertainment, right? This is actually serious, and it's really, really damaging what they're doing. Lee, do you shed any tears for the Loose Women? Actually, before I come to you, Lee, because let me just show you, Nadia Sawalha has been in tears about this act scene. Watch. We'll come back to that, Lee, but you come in now.
No, not a single tear has been shed, Dan. I can assure you that is the case. But I've watched a little bit of Loose Women, but I don't watch it regularly, and I haven't watched it for a while. But it's fascinating to listen to Bernie talk, and especially the way you're describing it. To me, this is just like another kind of example of how the kind of champagne socialist elite have completely lost touch with the British people and what British people want to watch. And like you rightly pointed out, the media landscape is completely changed. It's been changed for a long time now, in my view. People are much more likely. I mean, I'm an example of this myself. I do not watch as much mainstream television as I used to. In fact, far from it. I don't even think I've watched anything on the BBC, no dramas or documentaries or ITV or Channel 5. I forget that channel even exists. But people's tastes are changing. There is a lot more accessible thing and things that will you want to watch, and the views that you want to be reflected on YouTube and independent media, like the channels like these, where you can get a much better feeling for what people are really talking about. And it seems to me that they're just so out of touch. Mainstream media is dying. That's the way. I'm actually surprised that it's been going on for so long. But I suppose when you tell me that a long time ago they didn't used to be so woke, but it is so true. It is so true to say that go woke, go broke is a real thing. People are fed up of it now, and you can almost extrapolate this to people's voting patterns as well. I know I've mentioned it before, but people are changing the way they're thinking about politics. They're changing the way they're thinking about the information that they receive. This is probably the only optimistic thing that keeps me going at the moment. The British public are changing. We are waking up. It's taking a long time, but it really does feel like we are. And this is part of it. If we're finding that the British people are running away from things like Loose Women because they're finding it a bit too woke and not representing the things that they're talking about, that is it. That's what's happening,
Yes.
not just in media, but it's happening across all aspects of society. And my only hope is that it continues and we see much more of it. And that's telling the elites, just like voting for another party, by switching things off like Loose Women, they're gonna get the message eventually. But I don't think they've got it in time. I think they're too late down. I think they've already lost.
So true. It's like we're waking up. This was Nadia in tears, by the way. But first, these days we're living through economic whiplash, soaring prices, vanishing savings, and headlines that seem designed to confuse more than inform. We're told that this is all normal. that history is being rewritten for our own good and that embracing these changes is the only path forward. But every outlet tells a different version of reality, and the so-called fact checkers are just enforcing the approved narrative. Luckily, there's a solution. It's Ground News. It's hands down the easiest way to stay informed. It cuts through all the bias and spin so you can actually see what's going on and make up your mind. I have it on my phone and in my bookmarks online because it's become so essential to my daily life, and I'd love you to check it out for yourself at ground.news/outspoken. I'm going to tell you about a huge discount in a moment. But first, I just want to show you this website and app in action. So let's take one story, but you could use any story. But we're going to take the story of Donald Trump agreeing to cut tariffs on UK auto, steel, and aluminium as part of a trade deal with Britain, one that could reshape global trade and has sparked debate on both sides of the political aisle. Now, you can see quite clearly in one place on Ground News that over 500 sources are covering the story. Ground News then instantly shows how the story is being covered by the media, broken down by whether they leave to the left or the right. This is called the bias distribution chart. Then if you scroll down, you can see every headline about the story along with the political bias and ownership of the publication. Most of the coverage is from outlets in the political centre, but here's where it gets interesting. 49% of the sources come from outlets owned by giant media conglomerates. So no wonder the narratives feel so coordinated, right? When looking at the headlines, the left covered the story with skepticism. Wired fixated on the struggling reputation of Jaguar and framed the deal as a potential way to resurrect the brand. Bloomberg chose vague language, calling it a framework, which subtly questions whether the deal is even real. But the coverage on right-leaning outlets far more confident, with GB News celebrating a major victory for UK auto manufacturers and the New York Sun calling it a full and comprehensive trade deal that strengthens US-UK ties. Now, my favourite feature of Ground News is the blind spot feed. Every day, it will surface upwards of 20 stories that receive the majority of coverage from one side of the political spectrum. If you love the news like I do, the blind spot feed is the best way to get a balanced perspective on what's happening. So go to ground.news/outspoken, or if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, just scan the QR code on screen to subscribe today. You will get 40% off the same Vantage plan I use for unlimited access. That's ground.news/outspoken for 40% off this incredible service. But now, back to the show.
Moment, all of us on screen are in work and are proud of what we do. But behind the scenes, there are people that are really suffering. And what you don't realise is when you attack the show, you attack them, because you never see all the army of people behind the scenes and how hard they work. So to all my friends and colleagues behind the scenes that just got the most huge shock out of the blue, I'm so sorry. And Mark knows, don't you, how much of how upset I've been at home about it. I just can't bear it. So just be kind at people.
Well, they're not going to be happy with this in the Daily Mail today. Exclusive. Loose women ready to axe celebrity guests after ITV shake-up amid growing fears the show could be cancelled within a year. They report loose women are expected to axe celebrity guests from the show amid growing fears the ITV staple could be cancelled. The long-running series usually welcomes a host of celebrities onto the panel to promote upcoming projects and have had the likes of Naomi Campbell, Elizabeth Hurley, Joan Collins, and even former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak appear. But according to insiders, once ITV's budget cuts come into effect in January, Loose Women will no longer have A-list guests in the studio, and the broadcasters plan to only consist of the panel debating newsworthy topics from the week. Now, TV sources have claimed that Loose Women is predicted to be completely cancelled within the year, as viewing figures are expected to drop once the show's quality is reduced. It comes after Mail Online revealed that the show has axed their studio audience, an integral part of the programme, which caused upset among several members of the long-standing cast, including Nadia Sawalha, Ruth Langsford, and Colleen Nolan. A TV source revealed not having guests is a big blow for both the presenters and viewers at home. The guests are often one of the highest parts of the show, so it feels like a very strange decision to cut them all together. Instead, the focus will be on guests for Lorraine and This Morning. Behind the scenes, the presenters are really upset because they love having guests on and feel they offer a different type of interview to the other daytime shows. First, there are 4 hosts conducting the conversation, and secondly, they use their interviews to discuss female-focused issues, something shows like This Morning don't do as often. In recent years, Loose Women has welcomed Elizabeth Hurley, Joan Collins, and have sat down one-on-one interviews with Janet Jackson and Naomi Campbell, who all chose to do their chats with the show because they love it. Janet Jackson. Does she really love loose women? Not sure about that. It's a real shame that in January the programme will become a shell of its former self before it's inevitably cancelled altogether. Mail Online understands that the reason for Loose Women axing celebrity guests is because there simply won't be enough manpower to host visitors, and their decision have been to prioritise Lorraine and and This Morning. So by default, the panel show will ultimately miss out. An ITV spokesperson added the Loose Women team is still working on the show and its content for next year. Now, Bernie Spofford, this is something we're seeing all across the media, right? The mainstream media are dying. Sometimes they don't know it yet, but we've witnessed it in America too, where CNN and MSNBC are absolutely cratering and having to sack staff, and their companies have been spun off because they are like the past, and the new media just doesn't want to be part of it anymore. So I shed no tears. The people who Loose Women viewers really want to hear from will be able to go independent and will be able to launch their own YouTube channels, and then people have a choice. I mean, this idea that we should feel like sad that ITV, Woke ITV, is not going to be the gatekeeper of how we get our news, our opinions, our entertainment, I think is for the birds. Because I remember a time when Woke ITV over the Black Lives Matter movement was pushing George Floyd down our throats when we were watching Britain's Got Talent. It's like, we don't want that. We don't sign up for that. It's like you have signed your own death warrant. Certainly in terms of my case and my departure from the show and Piers Morgan's departure from Woke ITV, it was connected to Meghan Markle and the fact that they wanted to take a very pro-Meghan stance on everything too. Certainly not where the British public is at. As you said, they pushed vaccines on people. They pushed lockdowns on people. I just feel like this idea that we should feel sad about this is wrong. I think we should celebrate it. We should be excited about it. The media revolution is here, and we can look back at the shows that were good at the time with a sense of affection, but actually we also realize why they lost the support of viewers, and that is because they became preach outfits.
But they need to realize why they've lost, right? And they won't, will they? They'll never admit it to themselves. They're this, as Lee said, this metropolitan elite in London who have absolutely no concept of the rest of the country. In fact, did you know that when BBC moved to Salford, the whole big plan about BBC moving to Salford was to employ people from the Northwest? Well, there was a recent question that was asked, how many people are actually from Salford who are employed? And it's under 2%. The rest of them just travel from London. So they're not even employing local people. And that is the trap they're in. What happens in London in that metropolitan TV set does not represent the rest of the country at all.
Lee, do you agree?
I completely agree. And I really like what you just said as well, because it really rung true with me. It's the moral high ground and the lecturing. I mean, I do not want a message about trans issues while I'm watching Doctor Who, for goodness sake, which I haven't watched now for years because it was no good. I think since Sylvester What's-His-Face did it when I was a child. But I just can't stand it. The only reason we have the BBC in this house is because my wife still watches it. If it was down to me, it would be gone in an instant. But I've not watched the BBC. I've completely detached myself from the BBC and all mainstream media, I would say, for a good solid 3 years now. Like, I really haven't. I do not engage with mainstream media anymore because I find it aggravates me so much that it doesn't even matter what you're watching. I mean, the BBC is probably the worst for this. Brexit as well. When we were watching, I don't know, Gardener's World, we were being told how ridiculous it was to vote to leave the European Union. I'm fed up of it, and I think the general public are fed up with it as well, because obviously we can see from the viewing figures they're not watching it anymore. I don't know whether Doctor Who actually ended up getting cancelled at the end, but I hear that it didn't go well with the new woke kind of the new star that was leading it. I don't know whether she's still there. But they don't ever learn. And the reason they don't learn, and Bernie's right, for two reasons. One, they haven't got a clue what the British public are thinking. And number two, they're arrogant. They've had this, you can say the same about politics, that, the elite, they're entitled, they're arrogant. And even if you did spell it out for them, the majority of them won't want to accept it because they know that their entire world is crashing down around them. There are some people that have understood what's happening. And, you know, you can look at the US, you look at the numbers that people like Joe Rogan are getting, you look at, you know, Dan's numbers, you look at all of the people that are doing so well on independent media. You think they'd get the message, but especially with the reason the BBC don't is they have to get rid of that license fee. As long as we are paying that license fee, they will do whatever they want to do, despite of the public, to spite the public. It's never going to change unless we just get rid of them.
What a superstar debut from a new star of the independent media, Lee Harris, addicted to news on X. And always brilliant to have Bernie Spofforth. You must follow and subscribe her brilliant channel, If This Is True, which is available on YouTube. Thank you both so much. Greatest Britain Union Jackass revealed in just one moment, by the way. But first, your comments. Pauline Nicol writes, so disappointed in reform. I really had high hopes in the beginning. I definitely won't vote for them again. Now, if Tommy Robinson started a party, I would vote for him. Alex says on that terrible press conference today, 2 lame ducks discussing the future of their countries. They should be booted out and replaced. And on the issue of London and what's happened in London with this terrible, terrible murder of Blue, Meow Moog says, I would have to be dragged to London to go there. It's not London anymore, maybe in name only. And on whether Jake Berry is really the right choice to save the country after joining Reform UK, Growing Global says, I don't know why people don't understand. We don't want any previous MPs in the future. They're all crooked and out of touch severely, can't be trusted. It's down to them lot. We are in this mess. Here, here. Okay, here are your nominees for Union Jackass. A reminder, Lindsay Hoyle. Jane Kendrick nominated him, the Speaker of the House, for his bias. It's extremely noticeable. Ian Dale, nominated by Rosine T8071. Ian Dale, because it's hard to believe he's a Tory. I'm not sure his ideas are even small c conservative. And Jeremy Corbyn, nominated by Claire Wellen, who says that it's because of the new party that he wants to set up with Zara Sultana and his views on immigration. And the results, they are in third place with just 15% of the vote, Ian Dale. The runner-up with 37% of the vote, Jeremy Corbyn. But today's Union Jackass with 48% of the vote, the Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle. And that means that Lindsay Hoyle is in contention to be named the worst Briton in the world this week. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, Emmanuel Macron, he was the Union Jackass on Wednesday, but because he is not British, thank God, he is not eligible to win. So the 3 nominees to be named the worst Briton in the world this week: from Monday, London's failed Mayor Sadiq Khan; from Tuesday, Owen Jones after that car crash appearance on Piers Morgan; and from today, Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House, who seems to just have a totally different set of rules when it comes to Nigel Farage compared to the other party leaders. So what I'm going to do straight after the show is put them head to head in a big vote in the community section. I am going to be absolutely fascinated by that. Sadiq versus Jones versus Hoyle. But today's Greatest Britain is a really important one, nominated by Darren Donaldson. It is the Southport police officers Luke Holden, Tim Parry, and Greg Gillespie. And Darren says, although not a single entity, I'd still like to nominate the 3 men below who were the first on the scene at the Southport massacre. With all the criticism they receive around two-tier policing, it's easy to forget what these brave men and women endure each time they put on their uniforms. Hear, hear. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.